Welcome to the Real to Ideal Revolutionary Show. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. I'm excited. I always say that. I'm trying to stop myself from saying that. I am excited about this week's topic, as always, because otherwise, why would I do this? The whole point of being in business for ourselves is to talk about things that we're excited about. So I will try to curb that in future shows. So to start fresh, welcome to the Revolutionary Show. Welcome to the Real to Ideal Revolutionary Show. Thanks so much for joining us. This week's topic is I want to share with you my experience last week when I take a week off every month. Sometimes I actually take the week off and go on vacation, and other times I stay home and I work on my business. That's the week when I'm going to be creating my own marketing materials. That's when I'm going to be writing my blog posts. And that's when I'm going to be diving into the deeper aspects of my business, like long-term goals, planning, etc. Well, for the past year, I have been writing a fantasy fiction novel, which is turning into a fantasy fiction series. And so a lot of times I use at least part of my week off each month to work on that series. And last week, I really dove in deep. Last week, I spent most days working on that novel, and I really had some great progress. I want to share with you that experience and show you what it has to do with you, show you what it has to do with the success of your marketing, and just share with you this personal story that's going to help you see your business and your marketing in a new light. So that's what we're going to talk about today. As always, if you have any questions, just pop them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them, and let's dive in. So last week when I was writing this story, I'm at that stage right now where I actually have written a lot of the dialogue. I've written a lot of the stuff that's going to end up in the final book. It's going to be the part that people read when they buy the book. But most of what I'm working on right now is the history of this world, the world building, mapping out what it's like to live in this world, coming up with a timeline of events, especially history that led us to the place where the book begins, where book one begins. And I was having an amazing time doing this last week, and I got so much clarity. And that's one of the things that kept fueling me all week to keep working on this instead of working on my business. So you're going to notice a serious lag in Real to Ideals marketing this month, this coming month. You're going to probably see less Facebook posts, less Instagram posts and stuff, because I didn't take the time to make it this month. But I'm okay with that, simply because this is also important to me. And, someday this will be a moneymaker as well. But more importantly, this is something I'm very passionate about. This story lives and breathes inside of me. And sometimes it kind of claws its way out of me. So some days I just have to sit down and write, and that's all there is to it. So last week was amazing. And I had these breakthrough moments. I got to this point in the story where I feel like I had real clarity in the history, the timeline, what it's like to grow up in this world. And some pieces really came together. Like some of the puzzle pieces fit together in a way that I didn't even see coming. Different parts of the book kind of came together and created more of the story. And so then I was learning the story like a reader would. I was actually not creating it so much as watching it be created in front of me. And as I went through that week, I got more and more of the book actually written. Like more and more of the words that were pouring onto the page were actual pieces that I can use in the final publication. And so by the end of the week, I felt like I had accomplished so much. I felt like I had been so productive. I felt like I had finally reached a place that I had been reaching for the last year. I finally reached a place where I understood how these pieces were going to work together. I finally understood how I was going to have this event take place, like what leads up to this event, what's the natural logical way for my characters to react to this event, and what would they do next. And so By the end of the week, I had this sort of like a high and a low at the same time. My brain felt like it was going to explode because it had been channeling so much. It had been on creative overdrive for so long that it was actually feeling a little bit overwhelmed from all of that energy. But it felt so satisfying and it felt so good. And I think everyone listening to this can relate to this in the sense of building your business. There are times when the pieces of your business are going to connect in ways you hadn't thought of before. There's going to be times when the content and the ideas are just flowing from you, and it's all you can do to keep up and keep writing them down or keep implementing them, keep creating them. And there are times when you have such clarity because all the pieces are coming together in a way that they never have before. And so everything you've been working for, all of your goals that you've been striving for start to actually fall into place, and the pieces line up, and you can see that you have reached that point that previously you had only dreamed about reaching, right? So in our businesses, we set goals, we set milestones so that we have something that we can work towards. Once we reach that goal, you might run into something similar to what I ran into at the end of last week, where I was celebrating the fact that I finally had some clarity in these areas that I had been frustrated with for a while. I finally had a map of what I was building. I finally had pieces of the story connecting in a way that they had never connected before. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us. And then what I did was I felt like I had reached a certain peak. I felt like I had been climbing up the mountain, right? And I finally got to a peak. And now I know that the book's not done. I know I didn't just write the entire book in a week. So I knew this wasn't the top of the mountain. This wasn't the last goal that I was reaching for, but at least it was a plateau. I had reached a point where I could pause. I could stop climbing for a moment, and I could just rest here knowing that I reached a major milestone. And so it's a time to stop and celebrate, right? It's a time to say like, yes, I finally reached that goal that I was working so hard for. I'm finally at that point of success that I only dreamt about last year. And I'm finally at this place where things are coming together. And so from here, it should be smooth sailing, right? It's like once I have my map, once I have my strategy, once I know clearly how all the pieces fit together, it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out, right? If only that were true. So that's not the end of the story. Let's see here. Jennifer says business is an adventure. Exactly. And so that's what we're talking about right now, is that business has a lot in common with this process I'm experiencing writing this fantasy fiction series. Jennifer, a different Jennifer Dragon at Jacobson says, those pauses are amazing. Celebrating is so important. Yes. Yes. And so if you take away nothing else from this episode, I hope that's what you take away, is that these pauses are important and celebrating is so necessary. So at the end of last week, with all of this clarity and the fact that my brain kind of wouldn't stop, my brain would not stop obsessing about it. My brain wouldn't stop coming up with scenes. It's like I just couldn't find the shut off mode. But at this point, it was starting to feel overwhelming because I had already done so much. I kind of just wanted a break. I didn't want the story to stop flowing, but I just wanted to pause, celebrate this milestone, and just take a breather. Like my brain really did need to relax for a minute, even though it was still full of ideas. I needed my brain to slow down a little bit and focus on something else. I mean, I'll be honest, there was a part of me that feared that I would come back to work on Monday because, I had 1 week off from my business each month. So that means on Monday I have to come back to work. There was a little part of me that was afraid that if I didn't find the shutoff switch for the book, it would be really hard for me to go back to work. I love my business. I love the work that I do. I love working with my clients. There was definitely no desire to want to put that on hold. It's not like I wanted to do the book instead of my business. That's just the way my brain is. It can be kind of obsessive sometimes. Until a problem is completely solved, it wants to keep working on it. Jennifer Vaylor says, yes, I make sure to reflect each month before planning a new month. Nice. So what I did to try and shut off my brain, give myself that break and reward myself because I'm celebrating this major milestone that I had finally achieved. So to reward myself, I went out to the bookstore, our local independent bookstore, because I do like to support them still, and I bought 3 new fantasy fiction books. I love reading. It's actually my favorite thing to do is, sit somewhere pleasant, like in the forest or on my couch or on the patio or whatever. Love to sit and read and just get lost in a story, especially a good story when it's really well written in it and you really invest in it and you go along on this journey and you really become the characters, right? So I rewarded myself with these 3 new books. I read a little bit of each one. Like I read the beginning of each one because one of the things I'm studying is how stories begin. Like how does an author choose where the right place in the overall history? How do they choose where to begin? And so one thing that fascinates me is the first like 3 to 5 pages. So I did that with each book, and then I picked the one that I wanted to read cover to cover. After starting each of the 3, there was one that stood out as one that I wanted to read this weekend in particular, whereas the other ones I don't mind reading a little bit all the rest of the week. So 2 things happened. Here I am this weekend trying to reward myself and celebrate by getting lost in someone else's story. And one of the things that immediately hit me when I opened up this one book for I don't even remember the name off the top of my head. It's not the one that I read all the way through. One of the books was about orcs and half orcs, and it's very similar to the TV show Sons of Anarchy. It's one of the reasons that it appealed to me. And it also had on the back cover, it had a blurb from one of my favorite authors. So if that favorite author liked this book, I figured it was worth picking up. The person who wrote this book, I'd never heard of. Same with the other 2 books. I had never heard of the authors. This was me really just experimenting. Within the first 3 to 5 pages, I was blown away. The story writing is wonderful. The thing that blew me away is that as soon as I dove into that book, as soon as I realized what these characters were like and what this world was going to be like, the further I got into this story, I immediately recognized how I was playing small in my own book. I immediately recognized how, even though I'd had these massive breakthroughs and I finally had this clarity, that I was still playing small with my characters. I was holding back. I was afraid of the violence that I feel is necessary to make a great fantasy fiction story. And so I was really struggling with, like, do I allow my characters to kill? Like, do I allow murders of humans to happen? Or, can murder only happen if it's, a fantasy race or if it's like a robot or drone or something like that? Is it okay to kill humans and that kind of thing? And when I say kill, I mean like, battles. I mean where there's like swords clashing and stuff like that. I don't mean just like random murders on the street or anything like that. But I was really struggling with, like, what is okay in fantasy fiction? Like, how brutal can I get without turning my readers off? How graphic and gruesome can I go without losing readers, right? I'm not doing this for the money, but I am doing it to make I want it to be a very compelling story. I want it to be the kind of book that people, when they pick it up, they cannot put it down until they have closed the back cover. And I want it to really be gripping from moment 1 all the way through. I want to create that sense of stress and triumph and ups and downs and heartbreak and laughter and everything like that. So as soon as I opened up this other book, I realized that I had definitely been holding back. I was afraid of what I would come up with if I took those limitations off, if I stopped worrying about what is okay. I mean, keep in mind, I'm writing this for myself at the moment. No one else has seen it. So I can be as violent as I want with my characters right now. It can always be edited later. Again, same thing goes for your business. I don't recommend getting lost in compare-itis, right? When you start to check out what the competition is doing, that's not necessarily healthy either. But when we go about our business, when we connect with other leaders, other peers of ours, other potential clients, we tend to check each other out, right? I know when someone comes to me and asks me questions and looks like they're leading towards signing up for a sales call, I tend to check out their Facebook page, their social media, their website, and that kind of stuff. And so we see things. And so one of the things that we may see when we go to a competitor's website is we may realize how much further along they seem, how they seem to have it all figured out, how they seem to have their messaging just absolutely perfect, how everything just seems so tied together. And then the reason why we get stuck in comparitis, the reason why that brings us down, is because we start to beat ourselves up for why we're not that way. Instead, you have permission to do like I did this weekend, which was when I saw that other book and I saw how well written it was and how they were not holding back on the gruesomeness and the gore and the violence. I mean, it was between orcs, so I guess that makes it okay. But nonetheless, actually, I take that back. No, because the half orcs did kill a human within the first 10 pages. So they just weren't holding back. I mean, like I said, it was very similar to Sons of Anarchy when it comes to the violence and the politics and that kind of stuff. Do like I did and just recognize that I have permission to do that too. If this person is selling books by being this brazen with the violence, I have permission to do that too. If somebody else is doing that in their biz, and again, we're talking about admirable qualities. If somebody else is being violent in their biz, it doesn't mean you have permission to be violent in your biz. For fantasy fiction, it's okay. For your business, when you see somebody else doing something that you like, that you admire, it's permission not to mimic them, but it's permission for you to live your most bold and your most authentic and your highest truth, right? And so when we recognize that we're playing small, that's actually a window opening. That's an opportunity opening for you to see, well, if I feel like I'm playing small, how can I play big? What am I interested in doing to show up more authentically with my truth and less limitations, less holding myself back, right? Now, I haven't even gotten into what this has to do with your marketing yet. So if you're thinking okay, I get it, that's the whole message. No, we're not even there yet. We're still talking about the roller coaster of the ups and downs, the milestones, the plateaus, celebrating success, even when we realize that that's just a plateau and not the top of the mountain. So we are going to dive more into the marketing side in just a second here. Jennifer says, but it helps, Jennifer Dragonette says, but it helps to see how small you are playing. I like looking at people that are a few years ahead of me so I don't get lost in what it looks like in 10 years. That's a great way to look at it. That is a great way to look at it. And I could have done the same thing with my book and say okay, well, this person has already written 8 other books. So of course they're going to be much further along than I am. I just need to recognize that I'll be there someday too. And that is part of what I'm doing right now is I'm mapping out my story right now so that I can come to these successes and pitfalls. I can realize where I'm playing small so that I can then step it up and play bigger, right? All before publishing it. Like I said, for now, no one else has seen this but me. You have permission to do that too. You have permission to play around with what it would feel like to show up as your true, authentic self in the biggest, most boldest way. Even if you're not doing it on social media, even if you're not doing it in front of your public, you have permission to dress up and role play at home in your office and feel into what that would feel like to be your most successful self, even if you're not ready to go public with it yet. It's okay to write the blog posts or the Facebook posts or whatever it may be that your future self will write when you are that successful leader of your business. So one of the other things that happens when we reach that plateau, when we finally get that success and we reach that milestone that we've been working so hard for, we do pause for a moment. Hopefully you pause for a moment and you celebrate the fact that you've reached this milestone. You celebrate that success that you've reached. There's a downside, which you may run into, you may not. The downside is that when you reach that plateau, you are not the same person you were when you started. You now have a clear view of what's ahead. And you may have worked your butt off to get to this plateau, right? And no sooner do you get up on the plateau and you start jumping for joy because you made it to that plateau, right? And then you look around you and you're like, oh crap, I'm not even halfway up the mountain yet. Like here, I thought that this plateau was near the very top and that once I got here, I would only have a short distance left to go and then I'd be successful, right? But it turns out that plateau is less than halfway to the top of the mountain. And that can be very frustrating to realize that. Now, you're realizing it because you have this new perspective from this plateau that you've reached. By reaching that milestone, you can now see what's up ahead. The key is don't get frustrated because there's going to be many more plateaus along the way to the top. And honestly, there probably is no top in business. There probably is no top in writing a fantasy fiction series as well. Sure, if you look at the books, there will be a point where I publish book one and I'm selling books and I'm bringing in royalties and it's like, I'm a published author. Yay. There will be a point where I'm given a check, an advance payment on writing book two. And then I'll be excited about that. So it's like plateau number 2 is getting that advance check to write the next book because people love the first book so much. There'll be a point where they do the same thing for book 3. And so let's say it's a trilogy. At the end of book 3, I could call my mountain done. I could say I've reached the top of the mountain and I'm just done. But in fact, it's not the top of the mountain. I as someone who has published 3 successful books, I'll probably want to create a new one, right? Jennifer Dragonette, you already know what the next series is about because I admitted it on our group coaching call yesterday. So yeah, I already have a plan for series number 2, which I think you'll really like. But the point is that there is no top of the mountain. Even when if you desire your business to be a $1 billion business someday, if you imagine yourself as like the next Amazon or the next McDonald's or the next whatever, Whole Foods, trying to think of something more wholesome than those things. The next Oprah. There we go. If you think of your business as the next Oprah, even once you reach that point, it's not like you're really at the top of the mountain. You can choose to say, this is the top of the mountain for me. I don't want to go any further. Like maybe you want to sell your business and just collect the money and be done with the responsibility. And maybe that's the top of the mountain for you. But then even once you sell it, now what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Retirement doesn't mean that you just stop dreaming and stop reaching for things and stop striving. So knowing that there really is no actual top of the mountain, enjoy the climb. Enjoy those plateaus as they come up. All right, let's see here. I promised this would be about marketing, and it is. So that was the first part, is that there are ways to recognize when you're playing small, and there's things you can do about it so that you step it up and play bigger. There's plateaus where you can enjoy your success and just be ready for the fact that when you reach that plateau, you're going to have new perspective. You're going to be able to see things you couldn't see before. And it can be discouraging. It can be defeating because we realize how much more work there is to do. We realize how much more there is left to reach our ultimate goal of the top of the mountain. But when you know that there's no actual top of the mountain and that it's all about enjoying the climb and enjoying those plateaus and looking forward to them and celebrating them when you get there, that helps. So don't get stuck in feeling defeated by all of the things that are still left to do. Focus on celebrating how far you've come. Okay, Jennifer Vaylor says consistency is playing bigger. You're going to have to elaborate on that, because now I'm curious, but I don't know what you mean by that. Consistency is one way of playing bigger. Consistency is one way of playing bigger. I gotcha. Okay, so that's like a milestone for you. That is a milestone. So being consistent is a way for you to show up as your successful self. Okay, cool. I like that. All right, so what does this have to do with marketing? Like this journey I just explained to you about writing a fantasy fiction story, how there are these highs and lows, these plateaus where you can both celebrate and also realize how much further there is to go. Your ideal clients are going through a similar journey right now, in the area that you specialize in. So, just to use a generic idea, you're a fitness coach and you help people lose weight by that's a terrible example. Let me think of something better. Jennifer Dragonet, I'm going to use you. Let's see. You teach women who are living with one or more diagnoses how to choose their life instead of reacting to it. And so your ideal clients are going through a similar journey where they may have been going to the doctor over and over and over again, getting tested and more tests and more tests and more tests and more tests. They finally get to a point where the doctor has an answer. And it's one or more diagnoses, right? Now, there's a moment of celebration where they're like, I finally know what's wrong with me. I finally have a word for it. I have something I can Google. There's probably a cure for it or a treatment or something, right? So they're celebrating. They're like, finally a diagnosis after years of testing and guessing and struggling and suffering and that kind of thing. And then eventually they're going to hit that low, right? Of like, okay, now I've got a diagnosis, which means there's like proof that there's something wrong with me, right? Now there's a word for what I'm suffering with, but it doesn't make me feel any better. It doesn't help me suffer much less. Now I'm going to go research what this involves, like what's involved in this this illness, right? And then you encounter the overwhelming world of information overload, where Google has a million different perspectives on that diagnosis and that illness, a million different solutions from a million different people. And now you're crashing again. You're like, great, now I have a name for what I've been suffering from, but now I'm even more overwhelmed by all this new information that I'm not even sure if I need to learn it or who to listen to and who to follow and stuff like that. Oh, good. Thank you. Jennifer, you're saving me here. Floundering in your marketing message here. Now I have to figure out how to live my life with it. Yes. Okay. So your ideal clients are going through a similar journey of these ups and downs where they are suffering and struggling. So they go for the tests. They finally get an answer. They're on the plateau where they can celebrate that there's finally a word for what they're feeling and what they're suffering from, right? But once they reach that plateau and they pause for a minute to catch their breath, right? Then all of a sudden they see the mountain and they see how much further it is to the top. And by that mountain, I mean that mountain of information that they don't know yet, that they want to Google. Now they have to figure out how to live their life with it. And in their mind, they're thinking that now life is going to change drastically. Like now life is over, or, it's going to be full of restrictions and rules and special diets and stuff like that. So there's that defeating moment, right? That's me last week when I picked up that book about orcs and I was like, yes, I can totally let my characters be more violent. Yes, I can finally pull the restrictions off of what I thought they were allowed to do in a book and stuff like that. And then that defeatist moment of oh my gosh, is it back to the drawing board? Did the last week even matter? Because now I have to go rewrite these battle scenes and stuff like that. So there's similar highs and lows in your client journey. So for Jennifer Dragonet says they can slip into living as the illness or decide they can live with it as part of them, not all of them. Nice. And so what this has to do with your marketing is that if your ideal clients are experiencing a similar journey with its own ups and downs, its own plateaus, its own moments of celebration that could easily turn into moments of defeat when they realize that there's still so much more to learn or do or whatever. You can show them your own ups and downs through your journey in this. Keeping with Jennifer Dragonet's example, Jennifer, you can share the ups and downs of, being in the doctor's office, waiting for your turn with all of the fears and unanswered questions and the suspense and everything like that, right? You can show them those moments of being in the ER. You can show them the taking the drugs that you were prescribed that make you feel worse instead of better. Show them your ups and downs. I guess those were all downs. So you can also show them the ups of like, you finally get inside the doctor's office and it's good news for a change, or you get out of the ER and you actually feel better. The medicine made you feel worse, and so you did what Jennifer Dragonette specifically would do to overcome that and triumph. So you show them your own ups and downs. You show them your struggles. You show them your celebrations, right? You show them your triumphs. You show them how you battled this and came out victorious, right? Because that's why you're teaching this. That's why you're coaching this. That's why you're sharing your gifts with the world. You're sharing your experience and your skills with the world, is because you want to help them get through this more easily than you got through it, right? So you show them how you triumphed. You show them how you came out victorious. And then you show them how you consistently, even to this day, recognize the peaks and plateaus. Show them how you recognize when you've reached a certain milestone and like what should they be watching out for so that they will recognize when they meet that milestone. One of the ways I do that here at Real to Ideal is I explained in a few episodes back that my definition of success is not making $10, $20, $30,000 a month every month. I don't even care if I hit $10,000 a month. I'm back into those $10,000 a month range now, but it wasn't important to me. It wasn't something I was striving for. For me, it's more important to have that week off to work on my book, or those half days during the regular work week to be writing my book. So that's more important to me than the dollars. So what I shared with my audience, what I shared with you, is recognize what your own definition of success is. And so that way you'll recognize when it happens. So if I was chasing those $10,000 months, I might have missed out on the fact that I have a lot of time available to me to be writing my fantasy fiction series, which totally feeds my creativity and my passion. And that definitely feeds into how I show up in my business. Let's see here. Jennifer Vaylor says, after all the video games and movies I've seen, I can't imagine battle scenes not being gruesome. Yeah, I have gruesome battle scenes in my book. I just was limiting the kills to non-human entities, or actually non-living entities. Like I thought I had to have mechas. I thought I had to have mechs and robots and drones and stuff like that in order for them to be really gruesome. And it's funny because I'm very involved in video games. And so like I know you can get away with that in video games, but I was still unclear with how much I can get away with in young adult fantasy fiction. So yeah, I'm gonna have to explore what's considered allowed for young adults. I know it can get very smutty. Like I know that young adult books can be very sexual. So that's allowed, apparently. There is no limitations on what you can say in a young adult book as far as sex is concerned. Maybe there's no limitations on what you can do as far as violence is concerned either. I definitely need to explore that side more because, I've definitely been playing small and holding back and not giving my characters the kills they deserve because, that's how they're going to grow as characters. That's how they're going to get better gear, right? As we know from video games, you don't absorb magic unless you kill a magic user or something like that. It depends on the world, of course. Okay, so Jennifer Vaylor also says, yes, I had to learn to not let my chronic define me, but to work around it with it. Yep. And yeah, I see the correction, chronic illness. So for anyone who is living with chronic illness, and wants to not be identified by it and live a life full of energy, having the energy to say yes to all the activities your heart desires and not feeling like you have to say no because of your illness, Jennifer Dragonette Jacobson is your girl. So go to her. for sure. And I imagine the two Jennifers that are here today are probably in touch with each other since you're both in the Real to Ideal Superstars. Let's see here. Hi, Fiona. Welcome. Oh, Fiona, if you just got here, you're definitely going to want to listen to the replay of this. I was actually thinking about you this whole time because this was all about my experience writing my fantasy fiction series last week. You're going to love it. All right, let's see here. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. So what this has to do with your marketing is that in your own story, your journey of how you overcame the thing that you now specialize in, you are the hero that we read about in these fiction stories, right? So if you put yourself in the place of the main hero or heroine in our case, because we're gals, the heroine is the one who goes through all the trials and triumphs in the story, only to come out victorious and having reached their goal by the end of the book. That's you. You are the girl in the book who comes out victorious, right? We write the book about you. And when I say this, I mean, we write your marketing about you, but in reality, your ideal client is reading that the way we read fantasy fiction, right? Your ideal client is reading that and they're putting themselves in your shoes. They're seeing their own hero's journey in your story. So when you triumph, they feel like it's possible for them too. When they see you get smacked down by life, they relate to that because they're feeling smacked down by life, right? And then when you pick yourself back up and you triumph over whatever it is that smacked you down, they see not only a way they can actually pick themselves up and triumph, like they're not only learning from the technique that you used, which you should be sharing in your marketing, show them the actual tools and techniques that you're using to pick yourself up, but they also get hope. Just the way we get hope when we play video games or watch TV shows or read books or whatever. When that character triumphs, we celebrate with them because we triumph right alongside of them. We get swept up in it. And so that's what your marketing has the power to do for your business, is when you're sharing your own hero's journey, your ideal client puts themselves in your shoes and they go along this journey with you. And that's how you build the know, like, and trust. And so that's how this relates back to visibility, which was the topic of all of August. And we're starting to wrap August up, getting close to the end now. So that was probably the last episode that we're going to dedicate to visibility this month. Any questions? Any comments? Any stories to share? Because that's all I have today. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. Love having you guys here live. Love having you gals here live. Always happy to see you connecting and sharing your stories in the comments. If anyone's listening to the replay and you would like to join us live, we're live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. And you can catch the replay either on Facebook at realtoideal.com/podcast or on youtube.com/real2ideal. All right. Have a great week. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comments or join us in the Real to Ideal Superstars, which is a free Facebook group. All right. Bye. Have a great week.